Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Swipe Up, episode 215. This is the show where I share my opinions on current events, whether you like it or not. Let's get it started, shall we? With the first story, website goes viral as it writes full articles and papers in seconds. Last week, I talked about AI quite a bit, in context with visuals, the generators, the image generators that these AIs have, like DALL-E 2, where you type in a word prompt and it, shoots out an image that, based on that word prompt, in any kind of style, from photorealistic to 3D rendered to minimalist to expressionist and everywhere in between, and how that is going to replace a lot of jobs. I think a lot of people in the design industry, graphic design industry, and just all of those connected industries, creative industries that work for companies, are probably going to be replaced with AI very soon. I also heard a story this morning about Amazon eliminating its HR department and turning and using AI basically to replace their HR department. So they use AI to choose who gets hired to the company. So there's going to be a lot of things, and this is just another one of those things. So for writers, and I mentioned how it can spit out stories and things like that. I mean, you want to think about all the writing you did in school, right? Learning how to write the 5-paragraph essay, your intro with all of your points, your hypothesis and all the points, and each paragraph is a deep dive into each of those points, and the 5th paragraph is the conclusion, wrapping it all up, right? Now, you could do all of that stuff with AI, whether it's, any kind of length of writing that you want to do. And another thing they did recently that I forgot to mention in the last week, talking about AI, is they used AI to generate a Joe Rogan podcast between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs. Obviously, Steve Jobs no longer alive, never did an interview with Joe Rogan. I don't even know if Joe Rogan's podcast existed. I think it was just in the infant stages when Steve Jobs was still alive, and I never listened to it, and I would be curious to see how accurate the AI depicted Joe Rogan's views on things, since I used to be a very large fan of Joe Rogan's, watched all of his podcasts since the beginning, until he started leaning farther and farther more right-wing. And would have been interesting, and I was a huge fan of Steve Jobs, was sad when he died, and but it's insane that you could generate a podcast between two people, one of which is not even alive. And it's crazy. It's a crazy thing where these things can be generated so effortlessly. And, as far as these papers, I mean, it's going to make teaching, like, I don't know how we don't have the experience with this stuff to understand how we're going to acknowledge it and identify it in life, right? You go to a website, you go to a social media post, if not already, very soon it will be almost indecipherable if you can tell if that was written by a human or an AI, And the thing with these AIs, especially with like the image, these AI generators, in a lot of cases I've seen with the images that certain AI image generators do, they will use artists' work as reference, and in some cases generate work that could be in violation of copyright. And I would imagine on some level, when writing articles and stuff, there will be some plagiarism going on. If these writing AI generators are sourcing from previously written materials, especially on a given subject, there's going to be some level of plagiarism. But obviously not as identifiable as, if you were to copy and paste a Wikipedia article instead of doing a research paper where your teacher can just bring up the Wikipedia article. It's a little bit trickier than that, but it's going to be the ability for people to cheat and not actually have to learn how to do things is going to be a very weird reality we're going to be living in. Not that those jobs would be in existence anyway. Aside from, Stephen King, right? You read a Stephen King novel because you're a fan of his writing. Eventually, they would be able to make an AI that is geared, that can learn how Stephen King writes a book and use that to generate new works that sound and read just like a Stephen King novel after he's dead, right? The Stephen King family could continue releasing Stephen King books posthumously. And that's crazy. And there's going to be popular authors, like people using AI generation, AI writing tools to write series of books that are all authored by AI, right? And it's just under a pseudonym, right? Like J.K. Rowling, not her name, pseudonym. Do the same thing for AI. Ghostwrite. It's going to be weird. It's going to be so weird. And it's going to be even, I would imagine on some level, some people can suss it out and can kind of figure out and tell, right? Like you can kind of tell if you're texting with a bot online, right? They tend to use language incorrectly or differently than people do in the common speaking world. Slang and things like that tend to be not present in a lot of cases when it comes to bots. But this is past bots. This is way past bots. And being able to identify it, especially if, in general, if our education goes down, where people aren't learning that, whether it's due to the conservatives and their war on public education as they are currently trying to demonize every aspect of public education, whether it's labeling teachers as groomers and pedophiles or labeling educational books, history books, works of literature as evil and, should be burned, should be banned from schools. There is a constant and clear war on public schools trying to privatize education. If they're successful, or if just the evolution of these AIs removes any ability to know if somebody's actually learning how to write. It's like even worse than the idea of calculators in math class growing up. Right? Why do we need to learn all these things with math if we have calculators? Graphing calculators. Like, this is like exponentially crazier. So who knows what we're not even going to be smart enough to read the things that AI is writing. And definitely won't be able to, soon, AI will be dictating the way people speak. AI will be dictating slang, right? On some level, instead of AI trying to replicate how people naturally speak and write and talk and using the common day vernacular of things, eventually that will shift and humans will be following the AI changes and evolution of speech. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the reality of it. But it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Because you can have, like, you could, let's say, use a few AI tools, right? I'm somebody, I have I never learned how to write, right? I can write a few words. Like, I have no creative ability to write. I have no creative ability to draw. I have no creative ability to do anything, right? I'm stupid. I'm ignorant. I have nothing. But I have all of these AI tools, right? I have this idea, right? I can put the idea into a prompt, and that one AI tool can generate a story, right? I can take that, copy all of those things written in that story, and I can put it into another AI tool, and that can generate words. I can generate a person. I can even generate a photorealistic person saying those words. I could even put it into an AI generator and have it look like Samuel L. Jackson is reading the words I had generated from the first tool. And I'm just a person that's like, oh, what if a pig went bowling? Right? And now I have something that looks and sounds just like Samuel L. Jackson reading this story about a pig going bowling. And then, if you take that further to the next step, where there's going to be video created based on prompts, you could then take those things and flesh out a complete movie where you have the Samuel L. Jackson character reading his lines, and you have, Ewan McGregor reading the other lines, and then you have Daniel Day-Lewis playing the pig. And it just generates all of that in whatever style film you want. And then you can take that and you can have AI generate the poster art. You can have the AI generate promo copy. You can have you can just create a whole universe of content with somebody that has no idea how to act, direct, film, write, design, has no access to these actors. And right now, it's probably not that easy, but you could get a lot of that stuff done with AI tools right now. So it's only like moments away. We are way less than a decade. I would be so surprised if in 10 years, there won't be like versions of classic films with different actors, different storylines, different edits, completely new movies. Eventually, there is going to be a film that is just like Toy Story 1 was the first full-length feature film computer animated. There's going to be a film in theaters that was completely generated with AI. Completely generated from AI. And I wouldn't be surprised if it made a lot of money. It wouldn't have to make barely any money for a studio to be like, that is the future of Hollywood. Because they only care about profit. And when you don't have to hire directors, actors, writers, sound engineers, cinematographers, marketing departments, graphic design departments, visual effects departments, if you can have all that stuff rendered in your AI tools, and it just, for whatever reason, that style of storytelling happens to coincide with what the popular demand is, the trend of the time is, and explodes. I don't know. It's just an insane reality we're living in, where these AI things, can generate believable content that's like, I mean, they're not perfect. Like the Dolly stuff, you can tell it's like weird. It's like a dream version where it definitely has all of the elements of, but doesn't look exactly like. Right? It's kind of blurry and like proportions are slightly off. But then there's other image generators that are just gorgeous. And it's going to be for everything, because none of these companies, they don't want to pay people. It's going to be crazy. And as somebody who creates stuff, it's like, wow, what am I doing? You know, like I don't know. It's weird. It's a wild time we're living in, and stories like this are just not that surprising. Are just going to be less and less surprising. But
Let's take a little break from the show to promote.
I figured out a way on my website to offer prints for every single painting. So if you go to a painting, you can buy the original painting or you can buy a print for everything. Artwork that you don't want to spend $100 plus on, 9 by 12 inch ink painting on paper, $100 for the original one-of-a-kind piece of artwork. Paintings range in price depending on their size. The 8 by 10 print, $20. Available in the store at inspireddisorder.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
Let's move on. Sadly, some bad news, which is a story that is all too common, which even this story is one of many stories of mass shootings that have happened recently. But this story, we've been sounding the alarm. Colorado shooting follows rise in anti-LGBTQ vitriol. This is a Vice News article. This weekend, a 22-year-old gunman opened fire inside the LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado, killing 5 people and injuring 25 others in a tragedy that follows years of escalating LGBTQ rhetoric in the U.S. and, according to advocates, could have been prevented. I mean, that's another thing talking about in the last story, how the war on public education, how they want to privatize education, they want to end all public services to people, but how the conservatives have been demonizing and putting targets on marginalized groups forever. That is their MO, to find a small group and to point at them as that they're the problem, instead of the fact that it is mainly an issue of capitalism and mainly an issue of them only trying to make rich people richer. But they have to have an enemy, right? People losing their jobs in the country. Oh, it's the people from south of the border that are taking your jobs, right? Well, they'll use racism as a way to justify anger at a group for jobs that are being sent away because it's cheaper to send manufacturing to cheaper places, because companies want to pay as little as possible to get things made, right? And as that gets automated, companies will do that, right? But they use racism as a way to confuse people, to confuse their base, to point their sheep in a direction, to be angry at something. And with this, they label, as they've done before, they label people who have different lifestyles, and they make up, completely fabricate, and demonize these people as being groomers and pedophiles. As historically, that's what they've done. Despite the fact that you actually look and see where those types of people, where the grooming and child abuse actually happens, and it's a lot of people who are in charge of churches, a lot, not only priests, preachers, any kind of religion. Sexual abuse for children happens all the time. Literally, religions are designed to groom and brainwash children, to get them believing in their version of reality at the youngest of ages, to follow in the footsteps of their delusional cult behavior, right? But those aren't the places you see these right-wing extremist groups showing up to protest to quote unquote protect the kids, right? You don't see Proud Boys showing up at churches and cathedrals with AR-15s because priests and preachers are widely known to not only sexually abuse children, but the Catholic Church specifically has protected those priests and just move them around. Very similar to police officers, right? They get fired from one department, they get hired at another department, right? Those are the people that should be focused on to protect the children, right? The police literally killing unarmed children, adults, constantly. Regularly, stories come out about police using their control and authority to abuse children, whether it's physically, mentally, sexually, all of those things. Or the priests, these heads of religions. But that's not where these conservatives are showing up with their guns. Because that's not where the targets are being placed. Those aren't the people that are being demonized by their shepherds, by the politicians. The politicians regularly call for violence. One of Trump's biggest things when he was running, back in my day, we would have punched them right in the face. Back in my day, we would have laid them out, right? Constantly calling for violence. And demonizing every marginalized group, right? Same thing with the conservative politicians now. All of the same thing. All of the same bullshit rhetoric. Labeling marginalized groups, cross-dressers, trans, anything that's not straight white people. Labeled as groomers, right? They have their simple little branding. Groomers, pedophiles, boom, that's their little brand. They put it on whoever they want, their marginalized group. That's our new enemy. Those are our enemies. We don't actually care about protecting kids. We do at no point do we care about protecting kids, right? In fact, we want to make sure all of our people have their guns. We're going to defend our people's rights to own these tools designed to end life, right? Because that's what we want them to do, right? They literally celebrate a child who murdered multiple protesters, right? They celebrated him as a hero. That is exactly what they want their base to do. They want them to use the guns that they fight so desperately to keep against the targeted people that they demonize regularly. They say that they're at the heart of all of their problems, right? All the property damage during BLM was done by the enemy. Meanwhile, majority of them were found to have been right-wing groups doing the damage. But that's not who Kyle Rittenhouse went to go murder. He went to just go murder people that he was told by his politician shepherds, right? He was the sheep to carry out their orders. They put the label on the protesters. They put the target on the protesters, and he went and executed what they wanted, and they celebrated him for it. And when stuff like this happens, Colorado, I mean, there was a Walmart shooting. There's mass shootings all the time. But it's not surprising that this group, these people that live lives that historically have been around since human beings have existed, there's always been a plethora, an infinite amount of ways to experience this reality that is not this binary, made up, straight, white, male, female, that's it. Never. Never in the history of mankind has it ever been that way. They have just used these marginalized groups as ways to deflect and as ways to demonize, to distract people from the real issues, from the real things that are the problem in this country. So it's sad. It's absolutely sad and disgusting. And, you know, it's not surprising that politicians put targets on people to see people go out and shoot at those targets. Whether it's them putting a target on who they felt was their political enemy with Pelosi, or if it's them putting targets and making up completely fabricated, unproven, disgusting rhetoric around their targets they put on anything that's not anybody that experiences life in a way that is different from their just delusional binary view of human existence. Let's move on. This is some bad news. No, it's not bad news. This is not something I would love. The idea is great, but the reality is I know what would happen, right? A movie theater in Switzerland replaced seats with double beds to watch movies. Right? Of course, it sounds great. Kind of. There's problems, but it sounds great. Go to a movie theater. Oh, it's the most comfortable way you can watch a movie, right? Laying down in bed, head propped up, big giant screen, great. Same thing with when movie theaters put in the nice, comfortable lazy boy seats that you can recline. They had little tables on them, right? I remember I went and saw Hateful Eight in a movie theater downtown Denver. Had those big, cushy seats, the table, recliner. Every time I have gone to see a movie in one of those recliner seats, I am constantly either falling asleep or on the verge of falling asleep. And if I were going to watch a movie in these beds, 100%. But then you think about what is going to be happening in those beds in a movie theater. It's just, you go to any bed that is kind of used by patrons on a regular basis is going to get disgusting, right? The same way when you go into a hotel, a motel, a Holiday Inn, right? The comforter never gets washed. The sheets, you put a black light up, you see a kaleidoscope of patterns and colors and stains that you never thought would have existed in the areas and places that they do. And I understand a movie theater, a little bit different. There's going to be multiple people there, so people can't really go as crazy as they would in a hotel or a motel or a Holiday Inn. But not to say that it will never happen. And it's like, I worked at a movie theater. You know what movie theaters don't have? They don't have laundry service, right? They don't have washers and dry. Maybe in Switzerland they do. But they don't have a place where they take the bedding off of the beds because there is no bedding. There's no sheets on movie theater chairs, right, to wash. And you're not going to be you have like 5 screenings of a movie in a theater. You're going to wash those sheets between each screening. How many movie theaters? Like, this is like thousands and thousands of sheets of bedding you'd have to wash between each showing. Even if you had extras, that would so crazy. So guaranteed they're not washing things as much as they should. You go into, maybe the idea is to go into the early screening at this theater, right? Because that's the time where the sheets are the less sticky, right? There's not as many wet spots in the sheets when you go first thing in the morning. But if you go to a late screening, man, you might get diseases. I don't just like, who's going to want that? I like the idea of the recliner in a movie theater. Great idea. Makes it feel like you're at home, right? The super comfortable. It's definitely comfortable. The best, like, comfort wise to watch a movie. Big recliner. But in my experience, you go into a dark room, you're super comfortable. Even if you have a TV going, I'm fighting sleep, constantly fighting sleep. Right? I had a projector in my living room. I had a giant screen everywhere I've lived for like the last decade plus, up until moving out to the desert. Right? And It's so easy to fall asleep. I don't care how big the screen is. If you're sitting down or laying down in a dark room and you're very comfortable, you're going to fall asleep. So, like, I would imagine there's going to be tons of people falling asleep. And imagine that. Imagine, like, laying down on a bed, even if, like, the dirty stuff isn't happening, right? People aren't having sex, which definitely is going to happen. There's going to be hand jobs, right? There's fingering going on. There's hand play going on. There's things that are going to happen at this theater. But let's say that doesn't happen, right? Somehow you can guarantee nobody's going to play around with each other's genitals or your own, right? Just laying down on a pillow where somebody falls asleep and drools. The idea that the person before you fell asleep on the pillow you're laying on and may have drooled is disgusting enough. So even the idea of this seems good. I don't think it's one of those things. It's like beware what you wish for. You don't want a movie theater full of beds for so many reasons. That's not what's going to fix the movie industry, right? Not going to be like make going to the movies more of an experience, make it more affordable. People would love that. The subscription stuff is great, right? Maybe make theaters like have studios not make theaters rely so heavily on their concessions, right? Let theaters make more money off the ticket sales than they do, right? Because that's where movie theaters really only make their money off of concessions. So that's why popcorn and soda is insanely priced, right? Studios make a big cut from the ticket sales, right? It's very little money movie theaters make off ticket sales. But if they change that, right? I mean, Disney, there was this thing in Disney tried to do when The Little Mermaid came out, the first one, the animated one. They wanted like over 100% of the ticket sales, which means they wanted to eat into the theater's concession sales. Because that's Disney. Disney is like one of the most greediest companies. And I mean, they look all sweet and like, here, look at all these nice things. We care about families. But really, they're just squeezing every last penny out of you. And every last penny out of anywhere they can get, everywhere. From their customers, from their distributors, from everything. Not the greatest company. But there's like things you can do to make theaters more profitable. And putting beds is just, that's not, were you going to pay more? It's ridiculous. I mean, like, get a hotel room, like, for whatever you pay, for whatever they would charge to go watch a movie publicly in a bed. You could almost get a hotel room and just watch it there, and you could do whatever you want on that bed in private. I don't know. Seems like a horrible idea.
Let's take a little break from the show to promote the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced. Hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to asking me anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school. And you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus. And now let's get back to the show.
Let's move on. Last but not least, this is just interesting. New Netflix series can be watched in any order, and it will affect how people view the story. The non-linear anthology series centers on a heist and has 8 episodes, each named after a color, such as pink, white, yellow, and green. Kaleidoscope spans 25 years and follows a team of masterful thieves who attempt to break into seemingly unbreakable vaults to get their hands on what could be the biggest criminal payday in history. But of course, with high reward comes high risk, and the team must first get through the most powerful corporate security team in the world and the FBI. Unlike your usual crime series, where the events play out in a pre-ordered fashion, Kaleidoscope offers viewers a unique, immersive experience. So you may choose to start with the episode titled Yellow, while others may choose to kick off with Green. And regardless of which you choose, you'll still be left with a story that makes sense. Clever, eh? The series stars Giancarlo Esposito, the bad guy from Breaking Bad, Paz Vega, Rufus Sewell, Tati Gabrielle, Peter Mark Kendall, Rosalind Elbay, Jay Courtney. Dude, I don't know any of these actors. So it's starring a bunch of actors I've only heard of one of. I'm excited. Super interesting. I mean, Netflix has kind of experimented with some interesting stuff, right? Video games, don't understand it, don't get it. I don't think it's very successful for them. They've also done shows that you can kind of, it's like choose your own adventure. I think they did one with Bear Grylls, and I think there was a Black Mirror one that was kind of choose your own adventure, which I haven't really gotten into either of those. But interesting. This I like, because what I hope this does is I hope it makes a shuffle feature available for TV series, right? I've been watching in the background a lot of The Office, Parks and Rec, Seinfeld. Just recently started watching The Simpsons for the first time in my life. Watched a few episodes here and there throughout my life, but never really it was never a show that I was into and followed. But if there was a shuffle feature, which Hulu had for Seinfeld when it was on Hulu, but if Netflix implemented that, I would love it. I would love it. Because there's some shows, especially like that, like shows that aren't necessarily serialized, where you have to, watch one to the other, and it's more of an anthology series, like the Cabinet of Curiosities from the Guillermo del Toro horror anthology series. It's amazing on Netflix. Like, that one would be great to just shuffle, because you don't need to watch them in any order. Or Black Mirror, same thing. But I'm super excited. It sounds interesting. I don't know. Like, I'll probably check it out. I like that it's more of a shuffle feature for the episodes, and not like I need to participate while watching. That's kind of the thing that the choose your own adventure aspect of like the Black Mirror and that is like, I just want to watch. I don't want to have to participate. I don't want to play this like super like low end video game version of watching entertainment. But yeah, excited to see how that, it doesn't say when. Oh, January 1st. If you're keen to give it a watch, Kaleidoscope lands on Netflix on January 1st. So that's great. Interesting way to start the year. And that's it. I like companies that are trying to do new things. Netflix is trying to do new things as it's also constantly raising its prices. Great shows, great original series. I started watching Wednesday. I think I'm hooked. Right? They do good stuff over there. So I'm interested, and I hope it brings a shuffle feature to other series, so I can just watch stuff on shuffle and consume it that way. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Let's do some shout-outs and get out of here, shall we? Shout out to Pubbity, however you say that. Shout out to Vice News. Shout out to Lad Bible. But most importantly, shout out to you.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace. Out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.